What's up, vapors? Thanks for checking out Daily Vape TV. My name is Nick, and it's Fresh Build Friday. That's right, it's that time of the week again, where we get you ready for the weekend with a brand new coil build. Alright guys, welcome to Vape School 101 episode 4, where today I'm going to be teaching you a few Claptoning techniques. So in this video, we're going to be building some basic Clapton wire, but more or less it's about the techniques involved, and we're going to be doing some troubleshooting along the way. You will need some power tools for this video. You have to have a drill handy. Doesn't matter if it's cordless or corded, really does not matter whatsoever. Also, I tend to use a spinner jig. No matter which kind you have, it does not matter whatsoever, as long as it spins. This one here just so happens to be the one that I use in most of my videos. This one is from usaohmmeters.com. I will provide you guys with a link right down there in the description below for something like this right here. But honestly, if you're using fishing spinners or magnets or whatever, it really doesn't matter. With that, let's go ahead and get started here, guys. Go ahead and grab your mod, your wick, your addy, your wired tools, all that stuff. Let's go down to the close-up view and build it up. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've got everything laid out in front of us that we're going to be using in today's video. We have our wire. Today we're using this Anarchist 26 gauge Nichrome 80, as well as this Twisted Messes Nichrome 80 36 gauge. So, I mean, honestly, you can use whatever you want. You can use any different gauge wires. You can Clapton anything around anything. It really doesn't matter. Today we're just basically learning the techniques involved. So let's go ahead and get started here with our core wire. We've got this 26 gauge here, and we're going to need about a foot of this stuff. So let's just undo our little spool here. Alright, so that is our wire sorted out. Let's just go ahead and put our spool nice and neatly back in the little bag, and we'll go ahead and lock it in place in the chuck of our drill. So obviously this piece of wire is not very straight. So the first thing we're going to do is actually straighten it out by just putting it in the chuck of our drill. Let's just go ahead and pop it in the chuck real quick. Tighten that sucker down, and we'll grab our pliers and just hold on to the other end with our pliers just like this. So just go ahead and fire up the drill for a few seconds and check if it's straight. So as you can see, the process straightens out that wire really, really nicely, and now we are ready to rock and roll here. So first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and put that piece back into the chuck of the drill. I usually put a little bit of a 90-degree bend on there. Hopefully you guys can see that. And that way it holds on to the chuck a little bit nicer. So let's just go ahead and insert that. And then the other side, all we're going to do is basically just loop around in our spinner here. So we have this lovely spinner from USA Ohms readers, and we're just going to loop it around just like that and tuck it into place just like that. And sometimes if I have a little bit of excess wire, I might give it a little wrap around just in case, just so if I'm putting a lot of tension on it, it's not just going to pop right back out again. So there we go. And now we're ready for our outer wire. So this is the 36 gauge that we talked about earlier, and we're just going to get ourselves the end of it real quick. And this is really, really fine stuff, so you got to be a little bit careful with it. But what we're going to do is basically just thread it through, and then if you have that little 90-degree bend sticking out, you can just kind of loop it around there a couple of times. If not, no big deal. You just want to start off real slow if that's the case. Just give it a few wraps around like that, just to give it some tension. And make sure you have good tension against your spinner as well. So before we go ahead and, actually Clapton this stuff up, I just wanted to give you guys a couple of pointers here. Now, hopefully you guys can see my spool is about 90 degrees right now. It's about perpendicular. So what you want is just to have a little bit of back pressure on it. So you want the spool kind of facing the wire still, but just a tiny, tiny little angle, like maybe 85 degrees against the actual core wire itself. So that way it doesn't necessarily double over itself, but at the same time, it just kind of makes those wraps really nice and super tight against each other. Now, as far as holding the spool goes, obviously you want some tension on there, and it's going to be kind of a feel thing at first. You really got to get used to that, but but it's just kind of, you just want a little bit of tension on there, not too much. And of course, it depends on your gauge wire as well. So 36 gauge is pretty resilient. You really can put a little bit more tension on it with 36 gauge as opposed to, you know, something like 40 gauge. And the finer the wire gets, the less pressure you want on that spool. So just kind of feel it out at first. You're going to have to just kind of guess and test. And obviously mistakes are going to happen. It's okay. Just continue and move on past it. It's no big deal whatsoever. One thing that I really like is to poke a hole in my actual spool. So I'll just take my tweezers there, and I like to poke the centerpiece out so that I can pinch my spool. I can have it held between my thumb and forefinger here and actually pinch my spool to adjust the tension. And that way it's just as simple as loosening up or tightening up on the spool itself, and that way I know exactly how much tension I need to put on there. So I'm going to do this process a little bit slow at first, so hopefully you guys can see it a little bit better. And as you can see, I've got that angle on the wire, so therefore it's not doubling over itself, but it also doesn't space that wire out. It gives a nice tight Clapton. So if you see a mistake, you know, if you actually see a mistake in your wire, all you got to do is basically just back the drill off a couple of turns and pull against the wire. Just like that. And if you see a mistake, no big deal. Just back it off a couple of turns and then just get right back into it. And there's really nothing you could do to absolutely screw up this wire. Unless you're just going way too quickly and you're just a whole big wiry mess, then you know you might have to start over. But honestly, there's a lot you can do to kind of prevent those mistakes as well as fix them. So I just did it back a couple of turns there. I turned it back, and then now what I usually like to do is just take my thumb and forefinger right against this little bit of wire that got already Claptoned on there and just kind of run my fingers across it to straighten it back out again. And that is something that has really helped me a lot when making fuse Claptons and stuff like that, because occasionally you will double up on your wire. It's no big deal. Just take your time and start over again, and you should be fine. Once you've reached the end of the Claptoning process here, all we're going to do is just take our snips and snip it off right there at the end, and then just make sure you tuck it back into the spool nice and safe so it doesn't spool out everywhere. So I gotta say, I'm pretty happy about this strand of wire here, and there's just a few minor little mistakes, but any little mistake you might find, any little gaps or anything like that, all you have to do is just kind of pinch around where the gap is, and then just kind of move a little bit back and a little bit forward here and there, and just kind of go back and forth with it until that gap is worked out. So all those little tiny spaces and stuff like that can easily be worked out. It's really not that big of a deal, and you're going to be able to hide it no problem just by kind of going back and forth on your Clapton wire piece itself. And you can also apply this technique to a number of different builds and a number of different wire types. I mean, obviously the next step here is adding another core and going for some fuse Clapton, but it's completely up to you from here on forward. I just wanted to teach you guys some basic Claptoning techniques, but that's about it. I mean, really, that's all you got to do for a simple little Clapton here. Some people might do the core wire by hand instead of using the spinner, but personally, I just find the spinner to be a little bit more helpful, and that way it just keeps it at that much neater. So there you go, guys. Let's go back to the main screen. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the build, and I hope it was somewhat educational. Now, this is just a jumping off point. You can do a lot with this sort of technique here. You can add different cores, you can add different outer wires, you could add all sorts of different combinations of various different things in there. But this is just some basic tips for you guys to hopefully help you out. And for those of you that might be stuck in a particular spot with Claptoning, hopefully this will help you guys. But that about does it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to click that notification notification bell right next to the subscribe button if you want to be alerted whenever I upload videos. If you have any more questions about Claptoning or anything you guys want to know, just ask it right down there in the comments box. Also, check out the advocacy and my social media links right in the box below. Make sure you like my page on Facebook because I do lots of different updates there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, vape on.